Okay, so in this case, we're going to learn how to solve and evaluate functions and to solve, but we're only using a graph. We're only going to use a graph. And the reason why I do this is because it's really a lot easier to figure out the graph part to actually, because you can use your Desmos and you can check things. And I'll teach you that when we actually solve just actually solve with not graphing. So in this case, when we're going to solve by graphing, you have this lovely graph. I'm going to focus. This seems to be a little out of focus. Okay, so you're going to solve this by graphing. When using a graph, it's important to determine if you're going to evaluate or you're actually going to solve for y. So this question right here, when the variable, I'm going to make this a little bigger. So when that number is next to the f, so it's inside the parentheses and next to the f, so when this is there, this means that you are going to let x be 0. That's important. So when this 0 right here is next to that x, so then I look, so when x is 0, I go up to my graph and I look, and then I get that point right there. So that point right there, that particular point is going to be, so this point is 0, and then I go 1, 2. So 0, 2. So that's the point that this is right here. So basically this function's value is, so when f, that function's value, so when x is 0, the value is 2. That's your answer. The value is 2. That's what that's saying. So again, we're going to go through and look at this. And this time, we're going to have -1 is my x value for that function. So I go over to -1, and then I go up, and I'm looking at that particular point. So that particular point is going to be -1, comma, and then I'm going to just go up 1. So when my function's value, when x is -1, the function's value is +1. So when x is -1, the value is +1. That's what you're really looking for. Okay, this one's different. Part C is different. So on part C, this one is going to be different because what's happening is you're finding when that whole thing is 3. So I like to take my little piece of pasta. Oops, you can't see my graph. I like to take the little piece of pasta, and you're going to have this when this is 3. So I'm just going to draw that horizontal line when f of x equals 3. So when f of x is actually equal to 3, that horizontal line, f of x equals 3. So when you have that and you're looking, maybe make it so you can see. So when this is actually 3, this hits right there at that point. So at that point, when my y value is 3, when the y value is 3, what is that x value right here? So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. So when f of x is equal to 3, x is equal to 6. So when f of x is actually 3, then this is equal to 6. Okay, here's the next one, guys. So definitely pay attention. This time, again, we're looking for that function's value to be 0. So if I just draw this whole thing, will be when this is 0. So f of x equals 0. Well, this time it hits at multiple places, 1, 2, 3. So this time I'm going to have 3 answers. So I have this point, right? So -2 when x is -2. And then I have another point. And this one, I'm just going to assume in between 1 and 2 is about 1.5. I'm going to assume it to be 1.5. We're just making a prediction from a graph. Graphs are never totally perfect, but we're just going to make that prediction. And then this one, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when x is 5, I'm at 0. So when f of x is equal to 0, x is going to be -2, 1.5, and 5. So you're going to have multiple answers for this. You're going to have multiple answers for this. So this is how you would do this particular question because you would have multiple answers. Okay, so that's how you look at this. So when the x value is -1, so what x value does f of equal -1? So when this is -1 here, so when this f of x is -1, so I'm going to look and I'm going to have -1 and I'm going to draw that graph. Again, I have multiple answers there because this hits at 2 places. So you have to know when this is, oh, for what value does this? Before you can answer that question, you must know the function's value is the function's value is -1. Okay, so before looking at these problems, how did you know when to evaluate? Okay, so this one right here, this has 2 answers. So this one is going to be when y is -1. Basically what happens is that this is not quite 1.5, so I'm going to say, or 1, 2, this is not 2.5, so I'm going to say 2.25, 2.3, something like that. You're making an estimate. And then this one is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 4, -1. That would be that answer. So before you actually go through what this question is looking for in question 5, by looking at the problems A through E when you went through and evaluated, how did you know when to evaluate or when to draw that horizontal line and when you are going to actually solve? So when I evaluated, to evaluate, the number is inside the parentheses. And that's when I know that I'm going to evaluate. Whoops, you can't see. So when you're going to go through and evaluate, you know that the number is going to be inside the parentheses. That's when you know that you're going to evaluate. And then the next piece is, when do you know? And then also, it's like F and then the number. Okay, and then that's a number sign, not a hashtag. And then this would be, or you could have G and then the number sign. And then that's when you're finding the y value. This is when you're going to find the y value. That's what evaluate means. You're going to go through and you're going to find that y value. So the next part is when you had to solve. So when you had to solve, you have f of x is equal to a number. Okay? So that's f of x is equal to a number. So the number is after the equal sign. So that's when you know that you're actually going to go through and solve versus evaluate. So this is one of those things. That number is actually after that equal sign. So when you look at this, so in this particular case, that number's after that equal sign. So in this case, what happens is, so if that number's after the equal sign, so now you have f of some number, f of x is equal to whatever that number is. So, and then a number. Then you have to draw, oops, helps if I can write, draw a horizontal line. And then you look for points along the graph and the horizontal line. And I'm going to explain that to you in just a second. So this is where we looked along the line, and we looked to see what that graph is and then where that is along that horizontal line. So this is where I kind of look at this. So what I'm meaning by this, what I'm actually meaning, if I go back through, so all of these horizontal lines, I have my pink line, I have my blue line, and then I have my like yellowy line. So all of those horizontal lines are just telling you, hey, this hit at one place. So when this y value was 3, my x value ended up being 6 because I looked at that particular point right there. For this blue part, when this was 0, well, this time it hit at multiple places. Even though this is just a function, it can still hit at multiple places. So it hits at 1, 2, 3 places. And those 3 places are 0. So when f is 0, we get -2. X is -2. X is about 1.5. And x is 5. So that's what I'm meaning by when you're solving, you're looking for that horizontal line. And then again, when x is -1, so when this is -1, not x is -1, but when the function is -1, so that's when you're going to solve. So it hits at 2 places, so it's about 2.25 and about 4. So 2.25 -1 and about 4 -1. And so my answers for this, I didn't even write that down. So x would be about 2.25 and about -1. So that's where that would actually meet. So your job for you guys is to go through, and I give you guys a graph, and then you're going to go through and you're going to figure out how to solve it. Either you're going to solve or you're going to evaluate.